Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2, season 8 of Crypto Sapiens. My name is Rachel, and I'm your host today. I'm joined today with our guest, gmChad from ETH San Diego and AISD, and Kayla Cho, founder of Meet Milo. So I'm super excited today because we're going to be going into AI technology and how it's intersecting with Web3 and empowering individuals and solving problems in our world. So before we kick off the episode today, I'm just going to start with an affirmation for AI and technology. So AI, technology, innovation, and wellness empower us to unlock limitless possibilities and create a brighter future filled with endless opportunities for growth, well-being, and positive transformation. Now, with that being said, I want to give our speakers a moment to give their introductions, talk about who you are, what you're working on currently, and how you envision AI transforming our future. So we'll go ahead and start with gmChad.
Hey, Rachel. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Excited for this podcast. I'll just kick off with a little bit of background. So started my journey here at UCSD in San Diego. I went to school for computer engineering and did a couple interesting internships that got me sort of interested in blockchain and AI as well. And I was going to do a one-year master's and instead got poached by a blockchain company to go work for them. And that took me into the next 3 years of my life. Have always stayed in San Diego, so I've really had a lot of love for the city. And during that time, the one thing I noticed that was really lacking was strong community presence in the Web3 space. And so that led me to start ETH San Diego. And it started kind of just like ETH Denver at a brewery, getting together with friends and people from the community just to chat about crypto and what they were building. And it turned in much more into like an educational organization where we try to actively teach and upskill our community members. With the recent sort of trend in large language models being adapted into every application and all over Twitter and all over the news, it got me sort of interested back in seeing, what has changed since my studies of AI. And this was right around the time when the transformer model came out, which is what powers a lot of these things like ChatGPT and GPT. And et cetera. And so I've been thinking a lot about how to kind of mesh these two technologies, how to bring these technologies to our community, how to teach about them, and also getting involved myself and trying to develop more in this space. So that's like the quick and short, and we can definitely go into any of those backgrounds more in depth.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing, Chad. And something I want to bring up for our listeners today. So with ETH San Diego, I've actually gone down and had some involvement with Opolis as a community partner of ETH San Diego. And the vibe is just so amazing. Seriously, there's no substitute for in-person events. I think it's really important for us to continue showing up and build community and show up in person for these things. So if you're in the Southern California area, definitely look into ETH San Diego. It's an amazing community to get involved with. So next, I'll pass the mic over to Kayla to give her introduction.
Hey, my name is Kayla. I also have a background in programming, though I switched over to business after doing an internship and been in the startup land for about 8 years now. That's where I kind of met Rachel at Harmony. Currently have been getting into AI, all things AI. Started Milo out of pretty much desperation. We've been working on the project for 6 months, and we really do see a potential for AI to revolutionize personal growth in more ways than not. Fundamentally believe that wellness is the key to a better society. So excited to be talking about that.
Yeah, and that's something, Kayla, you and I have always kind of aligned on as far as prioritizing wellness. And I've just watched you take off with using AI as a tool for self-improvement and for wellness. And that actually really sparked me to have interest to reach out to you and reconnect. And as Kayla mentioned, we connected back in our Harmony days. I actually onboarded her to the Harmony Ambassador DAO, and we did in-person events. So really, these connections here today have come from going to these in-person meetups and meeting up with people and the passion to continue growing community. And I feel like AI has really swept us all off our feet in the Web3 space, just as far as like the potential goes to revolutionize this already amazing technology and make it even better to help more people and solve more problems. So Kayla is just really a huge pioneer in this, in creating and building something in the AI space. So with both of you, really, I've seen you have this background in Web3, and you've done so much to help build the community there. And now you're both transitioning into these AI projects. So my question for both of you, we can start with, how do you see the intersection of AI and Web3 taking off and encouraging us to move forward towards innovating this technology and using them both as tools? So Chad, we can start with you. Since you've transitioned, or now you're doing ETH San Diego and AI SD, correct?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple ways to answer this question, but I'll answer it from a way that sort of, I guess, focuses on community building. And I think one way we can think about AI is it's an amplifier for just about everything, right? It helps you write code faster. It helps you write email copy faster. You can ask more questions. You can learn quicker. It's like a personalized tutor, right, in a way. And so I think for us, there's two ways we think about this, right? We think about how can we, teach our community to leverage, prompting, for example, to just amplify the things that they're already doing and allow them to just get better and, have more productivity in the things that they're already accomplishing in their lives. And then B, how do we actually dive into this technology and see how we can have an impact in Web3, right? And so if you think about like what Web3 stands for, a lot of it is about, ownership, decentralization, sort of ways to essentially take ownership on your life, your data, computation, whatever the case may be. And I think AI is kind of the opposite, right? It aggregates a ton of data, it compresses a ton of data, and it usually compresses that at large companies who then sell APIs, right? AKA ChatGPT. And so from the more technical side, like we're thinking about what are some interesting tools where we can sort of integrate these two technologies and use things like, let's say, ZKPs, for example, zero knowledge proofs to prove computation, or ways that we can help build technology that's, better for everyone, that still allows you to leverage kind of this amplification factor of AI.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a really great way to answer that. And I just want to touch a little bit on a little bit of what Kayla's working on too with this, because she has gone from working in the Web3 space and now putting these technologies together to create her next project. So Kayla, can we talk a little bit about habit formation and tracking, like how AI tools can help individuals establish and track positive habits for personal growth?
Yeah, for sure. Well, just to bridge Web3 into this whole thing, I'm still in love with Web3. Once you go Web3, you never go back. So that's still, down the road. But I think AI it's the technology that Silicon Valley always wanted. Web3 represents a future of the internet where users are able to control their data. They're able to pretty much own their data, enabling decentralization, peer-to-peer interaction, all of that. Where AI comes in is that we'll be able to utilize that data in real time, making better decision-making, making better decisions, and combining the technology to just create better predictive analysis. Where Milo comes in is it's kind of the intersection. We are not using a decentralized network at this time, but we do believe that you must measure what matters. And creating a personal experience it's the pillar for Milo. No longer are expensive life strategists and coach only exclusive to the wealthy. We're able to tap into a wealth of information using AI and train it so that it remembers your memory architecture. It remembers your day-to-day, your weaknesses. And the idea is to create an incentive alignment where you essentially create the best environment for your personal growth using AI.
That's amazing. Just to see the potential this technology has to help people improve themselves. Like Kayla, I've seen you do this. Like you were doing an experiment where for 1 week you let AI dictate your life. Like you put in your personal goals. I don't know if this was into ChatGPT or if you're using Milo, but you were like, Here are my goals. Here's what I want to accomplish. Give me the ideal daily schedule to achieve this. And I watched your video where you started the day with meditation. You let it dictate your nutrition and help you with your workouts and your habits. And I think that's just such a creative and valuable use case for AI through that method you used.
Yeah, to be honest, Rachel, that was actually out of desperation. I was feeling burnt out. I was anxious all the time. I didn't have a daily routine going. I did meditate here and there, but out of desperation, I used AI. I used layered prompting, and I had it spit out all of my week, hour by hour. And I said, I'm going to stick to this and see, how I feel at the end of the week.
Well, kudos to you. I think that's the clapping there on the soundboard. That really inspired me. I'm like, oh my God. And that encouraged me to reach back out and connect with you. That's just so inspiring. And I think sharing your own personal journey and how you use it is really important too. So that brings me to my next question. So I know a lot of listeners and viewers today are probably curious, like which tools do you guys use the most? And what are basically your favorite tools that you use as far as AI goes? And we can start with Chad.
Yeah. Before we jump into that, I just kind of want to talk a little bit about what Kayla's building, because I think like this notion of like personal AIs are really interesting. And if you think about a lot of the large models that we currently use, like ChatGPT or Anthropic's Claude, for example, these things are just very generalized, right? And so you have to prompt them, right? Give them a ton of context for them to be able to understand kind of your specific situations. And they don't necessarily consistently learn from your data. And so there's an amazing world, I think, where we have more of our own personal personal AIs, where we own our own data that consistently feeds into these things. And so would love to, check out more of what you're building, Kayla, but it sounds very interesting. And I would love to have my own personal AI or assistant that feeds off my data. But to go back to Rachel's question, I don't use too many, AI or LLM powered applications much. What I've mostly been doing has been just playing with different prompt engineering techniques, mostly on GPT-4, because it performs better than 3.5. And just thinking of ways of how to build applications with sort of the OpenAI APIs. So things like code generation is something that I've been playing around with a lot. Like ChatGPT is pretty great at generating snippets of code or generating like files of code, but it really struggles at generating applications. And that's because of there's like the shared dependency problem, right? Where, different files don't understand other files and there's missing contexts. So, the API is great. It feels like, calling that API is like a universal like opcode or function that just produces whatever you want it to. And there's really interesting prompt engineering techniques to have, GPT-4 output structured data, which is really interesting because you can use that for so many use cases, right? You can have it output true or false, which then you can typecast, right? And then use in your program. You can have it output like JSON, which is really great for generating more data and other things. And so that's been most of the focus. So I guess prompt engineering and then using the GPT-4 API to actually do cool things other than just output natural language.
Awesome. So I want to also comment on something you mentioned earlier, right? Like AI enables us to just build what was already there, right? What we already had inside of us and just bring it into fruition with more ease, right? So Chad, you've been building stuff for years, and I know you have a machine learning background. You've done stuff with NASA, from what I see on your LinkedIn. So it seems like you've been doing this for a while, and now AI has just empowered you to build and create with more ease. And create more useful things for the world. So the next question I have, and Chad, feel free to answer this, but what are the benefits of using Web3 technologies to enable decentralized machine learning? And specifically, I'll tack on to that, like, how do you see this enabling more DeFi tools or financial tools?
Yeah, this is a really interesting sort of convergence between Web3 and AI, right? Thinking about how one powers the other, how they work well together. And it just boils down to how do we kind of distribute sort of this resource so that it doesn't get owned by, just very few entities that have the money and computational power to train such models. So something that has been kind of top of mind is how do we decentralize like the training of large language models, right? So that these don't just get locked into OpenAI or Google or on Microsoft. And the issue with that is it's a hard problem because there's like this consensus layer. There's this idea of bringing your own data. And there's also this idea of like not necessarily sharing everything, right? So there's an entire field of machine learning called like federated machine learning. And this is the idea of like, instead of like having one general server where everybody sends data to, or it aggregates all this data and trains one model, like we kind of pass the model to everybody, right? So we take this model and let's say I pass it to you, Rachel, and you train it on some data, and then you pass it to Kayla, and Kayla trains it on some data. And this thing kind of gets better and better and better as we feed it more data, which is a general thesis of machine learning, right? More data, higher accuracy. And so that's one way where you can kind of think of a distributed system, right? Where we're all collaboratively training this model and then somehow benefiting from it, right? So you can imagine like a use case where every person gets X tokens for adding X data to this model. And they do it in a way where it protects their data, but the output is just a better model in general. And so that's something that's like super interesting. I think the hard part there is how do you verify that this data is good? How do you verify that people are actually doing this work? And that takes us into like zero knowledge machine learning. And that's an entire field that I'm just dabbling in and by no means an expert. But that's like, you think of zero knowledge as a way to prove verify computation or prove that you've done something without having to do it, right? And so training a model is just one of those computational layers where you can prove that you've trained the model, but without actually having to give that data over. It's just not feasible right now because zero knowledge adds a ton of computational overhead, but you can do zero knowledge inference, which means just verify the output of a model. So we're getting better, right? And so this is, I think, where you'll see a convergence of Web3 and AI with respect to Web3.
So zero knowledge technology, that's crazy because actually in the next 2 weeks, we're actually going to be having the CEO of Discrete Labs and Pandora come on to talk a little bit about privacy and zero knowledge technology in Web3. And I think bringing up the intersection of AI and zero knowledge technology is really important. And another one of my questions I had was about privacy and security in Web3 and how Web3 can enhance privacy and security in AI applications. And that also can tie into data ownership and control. So do you guys have any thoughts on how individuals can have control over their data and also have privacy and security integrated into these two things?
I can speak a little bit to the privacy piece. And that kind of goes back to just this idea of federated machine learning. We want to train these models with our own data, but we don't want to give up our data, right? For example, there's some interesting models that could be trained on healthcare data, for example, but you don't want to share that with everybody, right? And there's not enough healthcare data that's aggregated to be able to train an effective model. So one way you can do this is using federated machine learning techniques, differential privacy, and there's a whole field, right, of federated ML that has different techniques for how to do privacy preserving machine learning. So I think that's one way, right, where we start kind of gravitating towards focusing on privacy, but also being able to build interesting models or achieve that. In terms of security, I mean, there's many things we can talk about in that respect. So I think with Web3, right, I mean, there's a whole field of Web3 security. With ML, it's more or less about the data aspects and making sure you're compliant and you're not leaking data. With healthcare, for example, there's, you have HIPAA and you've got high trust and these sorts of things. You got PII that you don't want to leak. So.
Awesome. And this actually brings me to my next point. So something I've been wondering with AI, and this is on the minds of a lot of people, what are the ethical considerations and what kind of safeguards are being put into place, or what safeguards should be put into place to help protect users and do things with AI in an ethical way? Do you guys have any ideas on that?
Well, I think this is where the ZK part comes in, right? From Web3, although it's more of a technology. ZK can be utilized to give privacy to the users, provide data, yet still remain anonymous. I'm not too familiar with ZK, but I know the fundamentals behind it. As far as Milo, I know we had a conversation about data privacy. Currently, we will be able to scrape their data, but only for the the first year, so that we can learn. Really looking into that whole ZK thing, because again, once you go Web3, you don't go back, and we don't want to sell users data, although we still want to train the data models accordingly. So yeah, that's definitely a question that we've had to face. Right now, there's really no solution. I believe that we should have an AI ethics and transparency officer. I know that the Senate's trying to they're talking about creating a whole company to regulate AI and data security. But that's as far as I know.
Yeah. And this is something I really feel like we have a responsibility almost to regulate, just because it's such a powerful technology and it's out there now. It's out in the wild. It's, open source software for anyone to use. So I think regulating it and ensuring that people are safe with using this technology is really important. Chad, do you have any thoughts here as far as ethical concerns goes?
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to enough of like Eliezer Yudkowsky or Max Tegmark, you'll get spooked and you'll realize, okay, maybe we should take this more seriously. And then for those that aren't familiar with those individuals, also Elon has been a proponent of AI regulation for a long time.
Even Sam Altman, he's mentioned this too in interviews.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And there was this open letter that I believe was started by Max Tegmark, which Elon signed and Andrew Yang and a lot of others, that the idea was to put a stop to training larger models greater than GPT-4, right? Until we understand sort of the implications on everything, right? On society as a whole, on jobs, on education, on just about everything, right? Because I mean, if you've used ChatGPT just for more than a few hours, you understand that this has a crazy potential to disrupt. It also has a potential to manipulate, right? And to kind of put ideas in people's heads, for example, that seem very legit that aren't. And we can go down that whole sort of using AI maliciously to do things and create fake content and whatever the case may be. But the point is, this is a very powerful technology, and with power, you need ways to sort of have checks and balances, right? So I would, if you're curious about sort of people that are kind of on the more pessimistic side of AI, like AI will kill us all, just like what Eliezer Yudkowsky says, check out Eliezer or Max Tegmark. They've both been on Lex Fridman, really, really great resources, and they'll give you kind of some context onto that side of thinking, right? On the regulation side of things.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think I'll look some of these videos up and maybe put some links in the description just for resources for people to do their own research on this stuff, understand the technology, how to leverage it for good, but also use it responsibly and research the ethical side of this as well. So the next question I have, I want to ask you both about your future outlook on how you envision this technology affecting people and technology. But first, I want to pass this question over to Kayla about personal assistance and productivity. So Kayla, how do you see AI-powered personal assistants helping individuals optimize their productivity and achieving their goals, such as with tools like Milo?
Yeah, I think AI will fundamentally change the way we learn, the way we function in society, the way we think. Utilizing AI, we can tap into a wealth of knowledge and provide, and training a model to provide a personalized structure for somebody can make a world of a difference, because oftentimes we're so lost. And a lot of these self-help quotes, self-help advices, they're not personal. They're not custom to your needs and custom to your lifestyle. So starting small with small habits like drinking water or meditating for 5 minutes, every morning. Things like that can really raise one person's confidence and awareness, their clarity of thinking. It can boost their ability to maintain healthy habits. And at the end of the day, habits are what makes up your destiny. When you look back, those little habits build up over time.
It builds your character.
It builds your character, and essentially it's who you are. And so using AI to just fully, be the best version of yourself. Instead of being scared of the technology, I think we should grab it by the balls and and really have it enhance us. It's here to help. Obviously we should move with caution.
Absolutely. But I totally agree with that, Kayla. Just jumping in, using this technology to be your best self. I think that's so admirable that's something you've just gone in and done. It's really inspired me. So Kayla, I know you and I have had, our real passion for wellness in common, and something that I've done, with starting my own juice business, right, is I looked at each individual and I knew each person is different. Not everybody is going to need the same cleansing package and the same nutrients. Someone might have a kidney stone. Someone might be borderline anemic. So we need to customize this package based on their individual needs. And I think we can use AI in that fashion of customizing what each person needs, right? And make it personalized for them. So I know we're getting to the end of our time here, Chad. I know you got to hop off. But a question I have for you, Chad, is what are your short-term goals and long-term goals in regards to AI and with AI SD and ETH San Diego?
Yeah, absolutely. I think short-term goals are really just to understand this technology to the best of my ability, and then sort of teach that in a digestible way to our entire community. And this starts with things like prompt engineering, but then goes into how do we actually build things with AI that help us in our everyday life. So kind of like Kayla, what you're doing, I think technology like that, lifestyle assistants are sort of like these great pieces of technology that will amplify us, right? So understanding what the demographic is of things to build that will help us all, and just teaching that and giving those resources. Long term, it's hard to say. I think the world will look very different in the next 5 years. And then I think completely indistinguishable in the next 10 to 15 to 20. So it's hard to say. My goal is just to stay on top of this stuff as much as possible, understand both angles, the pessimistic and the optimistic viewpoints of AI, and try to take a stance and help others level up as much as possible.
That's amazing, Chad. So for someone listening today who doesn't really know where to get started, what would you recommend as a starting point to start learning these concepts or learning how to leverage these tools?
I think just understanding basic ways to prompt ChatGPT, right? That's going to give you an edge on how to get the most out of the system. And then, find your passion or bring in what you're already good at and leverage those prompt tools to do what you do better, faster, quicker.
Absolutely. So I want to pass the mic over to Kayla. So Kayla, what are your short and long-term goals for Milo?
Short-term goal is to build a product that actually is tangible and can change someone's life outside of the metaverse, outside of the meta, and get them really fully into their body. Long-term goal is to harness the power of AI to enhance human quality of life, so that we're no longer victims of our circumstances, to create a better environment. Chad, I know you have a hard stop pretty soon. Is there anything you want to add to that?
I think you summed it up well. Honestly, I think in this world, the best thing we can do is just stay on top of things, right? And try to give back as much as possible to those that are in their learning journeys. So.
Absolutely. I think really trying your best to show up and understand these technologies and leverage them to create a better world and create a better internal world for yourself is really important. I think we can use this technology for things like building more regenerative systems, doing things that are better for our planet, doing things that are better for humans, for animals, and just really using this to make a better world. So, Chad, I know you have a hard stop. I guess the last thing I'll ask you is what resources would you like to share with the community today listening? How to get involved with ETH San Diego or AISD?
Yeah, definitely. To shill kind of our groups, you can follow me on Twitter at ultrasoundchad, and you can follow ETH San Diego at ETH San Diego. But then just to share resources, more broadly speaking, that I think could benefit everyone. WorldCoin has some really good resources on zero knowledge machine learning. They maintain a awesome ZKML GitHub repo with tons of ways to get involved from the conceptual side to the technical side. And then also would check out deeplearning.ai. They have a prompt engineering course. It's more for developers, but there's some really good tools in there for everyone to kind of take a look at. And then lastly, just to give everybody like kind of like a holistic understanding of the space, Max Tegmark on Lex Friedman as like a more of a pessimist individual, and then just any deep learning researcher like Andrej Karpathy for more of like the optimistic side of where AI can take us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chad. I know you have to hop off, but I wanted to pass the mic over to Kayla just to share any resources for individuals to learn more about Milo and to leverage that technology.
Yeah, so my personal Twitter is OXKYCC, and you can find out more about Milo at meetmilo.ai.
Awesome. So we will share all of these resources in the links in the description. And yeah, we are out of time here. So thank you both for joining today. Super grateful, Chad and Kayla, for you both showing up and continuing to build and to innovate in the Web3 and now AI industry. So thank you guys so much for joining today. Okay, friends. So before we end today's episode, I just want to take a moment to thank projects like Bankless DAO and projects like Opolis for making season 8 of Crypto Sapiens possible. So I just want to draw your attention to the links in our description. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see the links there. Or if you're listening to our podcast, you'll also see the links in the description. The first is going to be Bankless.community. And for those watching the video, I'll go ahead and share my screen. So you'll see here Bankless DAO's website. You'll also be able to learn more about how to join Bankless DAO, the different guilds, and different projects that we're working on at Bankless DAO. And there really is something for everyone here. I think it's an amazing starting point for those looking to get involved in Web3. If you're listening to this and want to learn more about how to get involved, Bankless DAO is an excellent starting point. There's guilds for just about any interest here, so I highly recommend going to bankless.community, joining the Discord, and saying hi and making some friends. To stay up to date on all things Crypto Sapiens, go to cryptosapiens.xyz. Here, you'll see all of our podcast episodes uploaded with a brief description of what they are, and you can also download them from here. Now, last but not least, a lot of you know me actually from my work at Opolis. So Opolis, if you don't know, is a digital employment cooperative. We do things like offer employer services to those working in the Web3 space, working on DAOs, or running their own independent business. So we help issue W-2s, pay stubs, and get you things like national healthcare coverage. So if this is something you're interested in, click the link in the description. All proceeds for referrals go towards supporting Crypto Sapiens. Thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode of Crypto Sapiens. As always, stay tuned for next time, and thank you again for joining.